Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of PHT TV and another episode in front of the Jubilees. Part one was the Jubilee original underground Jubilee versus the Jubilee that just came out within the last couple of months. And part two is going to be...
Is it Heritage Jubilee? Is it
yes.
Underground Jubilee? Is it the Jubilee? Is it
Jubilee 1, Jubilee 2?
Jube 2.
Jube 2.0? So we did the compares last week. If you guys haven't seen that, go and check that out for sure. It was an intense compare. I thought that was pretty cool to see the old style versus the new style. And this one, part two, is an open format. Hang out, drink, listen, kind of check out the new system. The old Jubes are still there, but they are not hooked up. We are just 100% to the new Jubilees and give you guys...
All right, so which camera is on? Is it that one? Or? Jubilees are just fun. They're fun. They put a smile on your face. And realistically speaking, isn't that what we're here for? I mean, I don't know. That's what I'm here for. So
exactly, and that's kind of what we wanted to do with this part two. We wanted to make it a relaxed environment. We wanted to give it the home feel. Like if you are at home listening to your Jubilees, this is how you're gonna do it. You're gonna chill, you're gonna listen to the music, and you're gonna have a good time. So hopefully you guys can join us and have a good time with us here today.
All right, so we're gonna listen to something fun.
Yes, we're gonna listen to some fun music. Unfortunately, copyright issues, we can't share with you what we're listening to, but we're gonna give a full-on review.
All right, you know what I'm gonna listen to? Monster Magnet, Space Lord.
I almost died in their mosh pit when I was younger.
Mother. All right, you know what the coolest song I've heard recently that's gonna get me laughed at is Bullets by Creed.
I haven't heard Creed in a lot of years.
Creed, man. Look, this is even an old song, and I'd never heard it because everybody makes fun of Creed.
I'm not hating on Creed. I owned the album.
You're not supposed to listen to Creed if you're an audiophile. But we went to the clip sales meeting. They cranked this thing to high heavens.
Man, if you're going to be a gatekeeper about being an audiophile, then you need to get the hell out anyway.
It was the coolest thing I'd ever seen and heard.
That doesn't sound like, with arms wide open.
Oh, of course. I didn't know who it was. All right.
I would not have pegged that as Creed.
Yeah, so, CEO Paul Jacobs, it was his idea to play that, and Matt was all about it, and I never would have thought of it. It was cool, but
I could see that intro and everything fitting with that concept.
That was awesome.
We said the concept while we were playing music, so we can't play that part. Do you want to tell the concept of where you heard that recently?
Oh, so basically they played it at the Eclipse National Sales meeting, but we can't show footage, but they had footage of riots being played in the background. It was freaking North Korea shooting off rockets. It was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. I just wanted to get up and fight somebody wow. Yeah. It was awesome. I think we should leave it at that.
I want to show this on camera real quick, the glasses here. Come on. Focus. Grab a focus. There it is. There's the PWK logo. That's what we're working with today. These are the glasses that we had to go for if we're...
Oh, of course. So this is my theme song. Play with Fire, Hippie Sabotage. Nobody's ever heard of it. Yeah, that bass is just effortless, you know?
All right, so before we go any deeper, we are 2 songs deep in this episode, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 to 15 songs deep, including the other, plus all the other listenings we've done of the Jubilee. Before we go any further, what's your initial review of the Jubilees? What are your thoughts?
I've had, of course, we've had them set up here, but I've also showed up to the so-called PWK Birthday Bash, which we played them live, but there's also a Jubilee Fest, like Jube Fest, whatever. It was the last one. It was last September, so...
That's the last one? They're not doing it anymore?
I guess so. I don't know. Politics and stuff, I don't know. But anyways, we played them for like 2-3 days straight, so I've racked up a lot of hours. My initial impression is that they're one of the most glorious things you've ever heard in your life, assuming that you're picky about your recordings. I've heard recordings that I think people would love on a typical pair of speakers, but the Jubilees are so revealing that it may turn you off. So sibilants in particularly, Jubilees don't like shitty recordings with sibilants. It's just they don't mix very well. I don't know. That's about it. So
that is about as high of a tier as you could put up with the most glorious speakers.
You just got to be picky. If you just throw on some random crap that's highly compressed that isn't recorded good, I don't know. I don't think you're gonna like them as well as some cheaper speakers that does a lot of veiling, if that makes sense.
I mean, they are the head of the Heritage line, and the Heritage line is notorious for that. I mean, if it's in the recording, you're gonna hear it. So if it's a crap that's in the recording,
these are just next level in terms of that, which is good and bad. If you got a good recording, sure, it's the coolest thing you've ever heard in your life. But just the comfort level is next level. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of your studio mixers, they actually sit there with the SPL meter in their face. They have to constantly watch that level because people don't understand when you get to super high levels of audio reproduction, what you hear isn't necessarily uncomfortable. So that's your red flag. That's your body saying, hey, something's wrong. The shit's too loud. You might want to turn it down before you go deaf. When things are just super clean, you don't get those same signals. So, which is good, but it's also, man, it's scary because you gotta watch yourself. You can hurt yourself with these things. These are like, I mean, you wouldn't give top end Lambo to a 16-year-old. That's the best analogy I can come up with. If you don't know how to drive and you don't appreciate it, then you could hurt yourself real easy. And these are the sports car. These are the top end exotic sports cars of the speaker world, in my opinion. They're all kinds of fun, but you better have a good head on your shoulders because you can get in trouble. So,
yeah, I mean, with other speakers, the level of efficiency that goes into these as well. You can have your volume knob at a quarter of the way up and still potentially cause damage to your hearing if you have the right amplifier and power behind it.
Other than that, yeah, the biggest, just the level of details, the harmonics on bass guitars, just the little stuff like, percussions, your cymbals. And a lot of people don't understand, like with your kick drums, your snappiness actually starts at your tweeter. And a lot of people think kick drums, it's 63 hertz, just because that's what concert goers, that's the band that they crank up to get you that, kick you in your solar plexus feel. But the snappiness of the kick drum, what makes it seem quote unquote fast, it actually starts, it's at least like 2 kilohertz, possibly higher. And the coolest thing about the Jubilees is when you're playing stuff like that, or you're playing bass guitar, which can literally play the entire frequency of sound, everything is so coherent, it's so matched up, it's so time-aligned. You cannot just take a typical speaker and throw a sub in the same room and hope for the same result. It can't be done. So That's the biggest thing that impresses me. It's bass guitar in particular. These are bass guitar monsters. I mean, you just can't take your typical smaller speaker and get the same kind of response, the same kind of scads of detail, the same level of harmonics that you get out of these things. It's just nuts, really.
Well, if you're talking about kick drum, you're talking about bass now, but before we were talking about kick drum, you want to do a Slipknot?
Sure. I don't listen to Slipknot, so I'll have to refer to you as to.
If you want to hear a kick drum, let's go to super early stuff. This one is sick.
Oh, what is this crazy mess?
Let's see. So, is there a type of music or a specific track that is recorded really nicely but still won't sound great on these speakers? Let's give him a challenge. What's the...
Oh my goodness. Roy's watching this. He's like,
what are you guys doing?
Cory, don't. Honestly, the worst thing I've heard so far is male country. I hate to say that, but I've heard multiple male country.
Current or old?
Current. And the sibilance is the problem. And apparently there's a lot of sibilance in country. I don't understand why, but I don't notice it with other genres. Never noticed it with female singers, period. But I don't know what's going on, but male country singers, they like their S's, like it drives me crazy. That's the only thing I've heard that I really don't like. Everything else has been glorious, but yeah, that's I don't understand that one.
Reverse of that, what's your favorite thing you've heard on the Jubilee so far?
Well, of course, the Oscar Peterson, You Look Good to Me, the intro, with that double bass, with the string, that's absolutely amazing. I think I explained that in the other video. Otherwise, bass guitar, I just mentioned that a minute ago. Bass guitar is, I feel like a dork saying it, but yeah, it's my favorite instrument. Bass guitar is the only, as far as I'm aware, it's the only instrument that can literally play from around 30 hertz to well over 10 kilohertz, like all at the same time.
So that's what you're saying. You listened to Red Hot Chili Peppers the other day. That's a good example.
Everybody thinks of bass guitar is, just your fundamental notes, but you're just hearing so many harmonics, in not just the harmonics in the mid-range, but all the little metallic intricacies where the strings are slapping the frets. So once you get an artist like Flea, who's really working it, there's just so much information coming at you all at once.
And they know it too. They put him real forward.
Yeah,
on the track.
Yeah, of course. With the Jubilees, everything is just so coherent and matched up that it's like hearing that stuff for the first time. So yeah, Flea. Tool is actually really nice. There's just so many Tool, and Roy knows this. See, that's why he plays the new Tool song for everybody. But it's just Tool. You cannot even imagine what it sounds like on the new Jubilees. It's just absolutely the perfect recording.
So what are the questions we're going to get asked? We're going to get asked, what are we going to use to power these is the main thing.
All right.
We can talk about
so here's my chance.
Yeah.
I can talk about Cyrus.
Yes.
So, all right. So we really like Cyrus. I really like Cyrus. Cyrus is cool with the Jubilees for two reasons. First of all, it saves space. They actually invented the half-width format. So, typically with the, amplifier, you're looking at about like this for a 2U unit. Cyrus is half that. So it's cool because you can get a lot of units in a smaller area, which is important because Jubilees are biamped, you know. So yeah, you can use a multi-channel amp. It's some of your multi-channel amps, and I say this halfway lovingly. I mean, Parasound's been really, really, really good to us, but realistically speaking, if you use something like an A52 Plus on Jubilees, there's no gain knob, so it can pick up a lot of noise. The noise floor isn't, which is strange to me because if you look at the signal to noise ratio, it's higher than stuff that I think is quieter, like Cyrus. So I don't fully understand that. It just seems like you should be able to look at that spec and figure out who's quietest and go with it, but apparently that's not the case. So Parasound works very, very well with most clip stuff, especially their 2-channel, but their 2-channel amps, they typically have gain knobs on them. So if you hear a little bit of humming or buzzing or whatever you might notice, you can just turn the gain knob down until it disappears. It's easy peasy. But when you get into Jubilees and you got to have 4 channels of amplification, it's very tempting to get something like A52 Plus, which we're actually using here. It works, but you probably ought to also notice some background noise, which is the unfortunate bypass. It's just not completely dark, not completely black and silent. In between songs.
We're on the Cyrus now, and we were on the A52 Pluses earlier when we were running the old Jubes.
Right. And the old Jubes is where the noise is coming from. Yeah. So, and the reason is that the gain is basically interiorly, or however you say it, it's just at full blast. There's no way to turn it down. So, if you are gonna buy amps for a Jube, I would either go with something that does have a gain knob, or you go with something that's proven to be very quiet even without one, and that's why we like Cyrus. So the new Jubilees, they're silent, at least in this room, they're just dead flat silent. There's no background, there's no buzzing or whatever. We're using the Cyrus Stereo 200. Works out very well, saves space, it's quiet, and like, what else do you want? It's got enough power to literally run you out of the room.
Question time.
Is this truth or dare?
No. Truth only. Even worse. So we kind of touched on it earlier, but you're gonna get the question. We're gonna get the question of, I have a 10 by 10 room. Are these too big? I have a 50 by 50 room. Are these going to be enough? I've mentioned in passing, but my only concern is that, cabin gain down low, because if you put these things in a small room, I've seen Jubilees in an 8 by 10 room before, not even joking. So is that the testing facility? I think I've seen pictures of that one, the testing where Roy did. One of those?
I don't know. I mean, the lab's actually a pretty good sized room, but so 8 by 10 room is actually a glorified closet, really.
It's a walk-in closet. You got some good space.
Yeah. So I'm not the new ones, but the old ones, But there's actually a formula to calculate it. So you take your longest wall, and I forget what you do with it, but you can actually calculate the frequency that your cabin gain starts, and below that frequency, you're going to get like a 12 dB per octave boost. So I would say, especially considering how low these go, you're going to get some cabin gain. It's just not, that's just physics. So whether or not you like that is a different story. Most people would, and I would say 80% of people are closet bass heads, and they would love nothing more than having a natural, and a natural boost at the lower bass frequencies. Some people want things as flat can be. So whether that's good or bad, I guess depends on on your situation, but just off the top of my head, cabin gain is going to be one big thing that you're going to notice in a small room. So, and you heard these things earlier. I mean, this room's 25 foot wide. There's very, very thick concrete. This thing was shaking the floor. I mean, so you put that in a small room and you're going to know it. So
I think that'd be a good format. We're going to listen, then we're going to ask a question, then we'll listen and ask a question. You guys like that? It's too late. We already shot this.
I always played This Love, Taylor Swift. I always play this. I play trick on people. You get these people in here and they're, 57. And you know what kind of music they're probably going to listen to. So I sneak Taylor Swift in there and just ask them if they like it. And they always love it. Oh, it's Taylor Swift. Ah!
Oh, what did you do? No, we did. We heard it for the first time because when I had you send me your playlist and I combined it with my testing playlist, and that's what I use a lot of times. And it's several, I think over 100 songs at this point, but it's like a compilation of the two. And I like to just put it on shuffle and see what pops up. And it popped up one time and I was like, this is great. You did it to me and you weren't even there.
One of the coolest, more well-known stories that circulates in the Eclipse community is Roy and Bonnie Raitt, because basically he was designing speakers one time and he was using Bonnie Raitt to test with, and he got these speakers working like he thought sounded great. He thought it sounded real good. The problem is that he actually saw Bonnie Raitt live one time. Then he realized Bonnie Raitt doesn't sound anything like what I thought she sounded like. It sounded kind of gravelly. It sounded, kind of coarse and rode hard, put up wet type of, I don't know. It was just kind of rough around the edges. And, the way that he voiced those speakers, it was fixing her voice. And he came to a conclusion at that time period that he doesn't need to fix her voice. He needs to make Bonnie Raitt sound like Bonnie Raitt. So that was an epiphany, and he that changed his outlook on how he voiced things, which I always thought was interesting. But a lot of people misunderstand that story. They think that he likes Bonnie Raitt because she sounds angelic and perfect, and that's not necessarily the case. He totally had a misrepresentation of what she should sound like in his head, and he made the speakers sound like that misrepresentation, but it wasn't accurate. So does that make sense?
Yeah. So we missed the question on that, but we'll come back to a question on the next one because we had a story with that one.
Oh. All right, truth or dare?
Oh man.
All right, what are we going to talk about?
Oh, okay. Actually, I had one for you, but I'm going to get into something now that you mentioned truth or dare. We play this game when we drink sometimes at home. What's your guilty pleasure song?
Oh, goodness. It would have to be one of the Taylor Swifts.
Yeah? Was it?
Probably
we already played
probably
the
one
Love?
we just played. What is that? I'll have to go through my... Yeah, this Love by Taylor Swift. That's probably it.
Yeah, and that's a great testing one too. I can't even make fun of you for it because I like it a lot too.
It's a good show-off song.
Yeah.
I'll say that because it just, my goodness, it just sounds like her voice is 20 foot wide in this room. And
all right, so I'm a customer. How the hell do these get to me, and how do I get them in my house?
oh goodness, I'm still trying to figure that out.
We can come back to it next time. Well, you made a list of it on Facebook not too long ago.
Yeah, that's.
Well, Well, we start with shipping. So, I mean, how do we get them from your warehouse to?
Of course, all we got to do is call a trucking company and say, pick them up.
And they are palleted. They have completely surrounds.
The problem. Here's the problem. They're hella heavy. They're just crazy heavy. It really, unless it's extenuating circumstances, I'm not comfortable with telling people that they need anything less than 4 people. So at this point, I'm not comfortable with telling people to even try to move it by themselves. So I'm of the opinion that if you have to blindly tell people how to get them in their house, you need to hire a piano mover and coordinate that with the shipping company. A normal mover can work, but they're just going to roughhouse them, like kind of what happened here, unfortunately. But everything worked out. We got them in here. But yeah, thresholds. I mean, the crew that was over here kind of wanted to push them through the door right on top of the threshold. That's no good. My biggest fear is landings. So they're pretty common scenario is that somebody will ship them into their garage and then afterwards they want to pick them up while inside of the garage, take them up the landing, take a 90-degree angle and take it into their house. I still haven't wrapped my head around that situation yet. So yeah, they're just ridiculously heavy is the problem, and they're not square either. So there's different tactics that's being debated. Of course, they make those straps that you can actually move an entire safe with 2 people, at least theoretically, as long as the safe isn't too big. But yeah, if you get a couple pairs of those straps, you should be able to pick it up. Now, whether you can get on each side of the Jubilee and actually fit it through a standard door is a different story. So that's my biggest fear at this point is doors. But yeah, long story short, we'll ship it to your house. The freight company, the only thing they're required to do is drop it at the curb. Now, of course, these are heritage, and heritage dealers are actually required to offer white glove delivery. It doesn't have to be for free, but we still have to offer it, which offers a very interesting situation, because your typical freight company, when they say white glove delivery, they're going to send 2 guys out that are completely untrained. They're going to be completely over their, in over their heads. They're not going to know what to do. There's no way that your typical 2-person crew from a freight company will be able to safely get these things in your house. So white glove delivery is null and void with these as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, that's where the piano movers come in. So the biggest issue is you got to get them from the curb into your house, at least in the general vicinity. Actually, once you get them into the room, it's not bad at all. But getting them up your stairs, into your front door, into your garage door, that's the biggest challenge. And even if you don't buy from me, I'm basically telling everybody, try to hire a piano mover, at least a normal mover. So it's
with liability insurance.
Oh, of course, of course. These are $36,000 a pair, yeah. And if you and your buddies who are willing to do this for a 6-pack screw them up, that's on you. I mean, so you at least want to get some people who, if they drop it, that's on them. They're gonna have to pay for them. Make sure they have insurance. Make sure they're bonded. So yeah, piano movers, they're used to this. They're they've got the proper insurance. That's why I'm telling everybody to do that. They're used to heavy objects that you can't grip very good. Your typical mover is, they're good at manhandling a dresser, and it's just kind of a different story, really.
And also, they're going to ask how much space they need in the garage to store them until the furniture or piano movers get there. So we are shipping on single pallet for low frequency and single for high, or does the high come strapped to the low?
They actually come strapped to the LF.
Okay, so 2 pallets.
I wasn't paying attention when they tried to move mine, and next thing I know, they literally have the entire assembly on a little furniture dolly trying to push it across the street, and they just about tipped it over. So make sure that at the minimum they break the things down before they try any shenanigans. Everything is just so crazy at this point. We don't have enough experience. Nobody has enough experience to say what the proper steps are to do in every situation. But I do know that very first thing you need to do is take that top off.
And the top, you can take that off yourself. It doesn't weigh anything. That's my thoughts anyways.
Comparatively.
Yes.
It's still heavy and awkward, but.
You think the weight is 95.5 as far as percentage goes? 95% low frequency and 5% high frequency?
Well, even the old one weighed like 35 pounds, but this new one has got that big piece of wood plus that giant compression driver at this point. So it's I would still try to get a buddy. So that's the only thing that made my eyebrows perked up. But of course, the handy little instruction manual, they've got this, it's showing 4 guys picking it up. Just to get it out of the foam onto the ground, if you're gonna do it this way, you really need 4 people. That's the biggest thing that scared me, is 4 people actually picking this thing up and trying to get it through a door or something. That's just, sooner or later somebody's gonna drop it or hit something. So,
yeah, I mean, if you wanna know how hard it is, get 3 of your buddies and hold hands with them and try and walk through the door at the same time. Right. Even just 4 people walking through the door without a giant speaker.
Something's gonna happen sooner or later. So.
All right, so that's how they ship, and that's kind of a broad sense on how you get them into your houses. Every house is going to be different. Yeah, so hire a professional that's going to be able to judge the scenario and act accordingly.
Right.
I want to use these for home theater. What do I do for my center channel?
Well, it's an interesting question. The problem is at this point is that you can't buy it single. So, ideal situation is that you would have 3 of these, buy an acoustically transparent screen. The only problem is that you basically have to buy 4 and
let one go to waste.
Yeah, throw it in your closet, I guess. You'd be $72,000 in. Well, that's the biggest thing that sucks, because you got an $18,000 speaker that's just sitting there. Hopefully they'll open that up in the future, but I'm not entirely sure that the volume is going to be high enough for them to justify that. What would be cool?
Well, you'd either need a single channel DSP or expand that to 3 channels as well.
Yeah, and they don't want to sell a single of that. So, if you did get a 3rd one, you'd have to get, just like what you said, you'd either have to get an entire another unit, or you'd have to have a situation where that unit could process another channel. So the other situation that had crossed my mind is, if they're cool with it, it would be entirely possible to get approved settings, like with our old Zilliqa units or something. So it was good for years. So I don't know. I don't think they're going to want to do that, but that is a potential solution. But otherwise, you're going to have to use something else. A single Scala, or that's probably the best situation. It's not even deal. But since the baseband is horn loaded and all that good stuff, that's at least better than a direct radiating speaker. So,
or you can get 3 pairs and do a 6-channel.
Now, what
LCR
would be
in front and
cool
LCR in
is
back.
if dealers wasn't so backstabbing and we could all get along, then, we could talk to each other and, hey, I need one, you need one, hey, maybe we could split. I just don't see the problem with that. There's actually a guy in Spain who wanted a 5-channel system. He had ordered 6. I wanted a 3rd one. It'd just be cool if I could contact. I'm not saying he's like that or anything. I don't even know who he is, but it would be cool as if we all talk to each other, and in situations like that, we could reach out and be like, hey, I'll take that one. But yeah, then you got the whole DSP problem.
And you have to be like, well, you get the DSP and I don't get the DSP.
Yeah,
and
so, well, unofficially, you can actually reverse engineer that. I don't think it's a very good career move to actually reverse engineer and publish specs. But if I'm just saying that if we could figure out a way to get an odd number from if 2 of us split it or something, we could get it pretty dang close. But I don't think that's going to happen very often, if at all. But short story is that you can get a odd number of La Scalas, and at this point, that's probably not what you need to do. Now, there's already been some people talk about the old school Jubilees being the so-called underground, being surrounds. So
I think I saw somebody post about that. Yeah,
that's another solution. You could potentially get a single underground Jubilee and split it with somebody else. I mean, that'd get you closer than most things, at least on the baseband. But most likely the official answer, at least according to Roy's actions, which he did with the museum, is to put a single La Scala in the middle. But yeah, you're still making a La Scala orphan at that point. But
but you can do that with a La Scala. You're not
yeah,
allowed
it's
to do
completely
that.
possible. As of right now, they're refusing to sell an odd number of the new Jubilees. So it's not.
I imagine there's a limited amount of them at this point. So it could be in the future when there's more in the production that they can release that. Question time. You say truth or dare. I dare you to take your pants off on camp now, huh?
Oh, that escalated quickly. Wow.
Need another couple drinks, but
I don't think that's going to happen in a couple drinks.
All right, but anyways, so I mean, we've talked about some different things, but physically, what is the steps to take you from source to the speakers? What's the signal path?
All right, so you want me to talk about it, or do you want me to show you?
Well, I mean, the source, let's just talk about it. So I'll throw graphics up on the screen because
it's not that hard, really.
And also, let's assume that everybody's using a node. Every source is going to be different. There's
the biggest issue is that these things are mandatory buyout, and I'm not entirely sure that. I mean, your random dealer throwing this stuff up on the website, I'm not even sure that they're going to explain that, which is a pretty big thing. There's so many people who contact me with a fairly innocent question of, can I use my favorite amp with these Jubilees? And I'm like, you mean amps? No, I mean amp, singular, like 2-channel. And that's an issue. A lot of people it doesn't register in their mind that you actually need 2 amps. You need 4 clean amp channels. So that's the biggest mental hurdle with these things. I mean, the guys who've been around them, they understand. But for your typical newbie, who has never been exposed to these things, it's just I don't I don't know if it's not in the ads or the literature or what, but it's just constant. Like, it's not obvious that and that people need 2 amps for some reason. So short story is that you start with a source that goes into a preamp, as usual. The other problem is that a lot of people want to use their favorite integrated amp. So realistically speaking, integrated amps they just need to, you just don't do it. There's certain things that you can do to, if you could isolate the preamp stage and blah, 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 just act like, if you don't know what you're doing, integrated amps are just a big no-no with these. So what you need is a true separate preamp. So you got your source, whether that be a CD player or a streamer, that's going to plug into your preamp. And basically that preamp means it has no amplification. It's got a volume control. It's got your switchers for your inputs, not much else. Okay, out of your preamp, you're basically going to go into the DSP, or you call it active crossover. It's the same thing. So what that's going to do, it's going to split it into 2 sets. You've got stereo going in, and you got 4 outputs going out. Left and right, low frequency, left and right, high frequency, and that's actually labeled in your owner's manual. From that, you're going to take those outputs and you're going to go into 4 clean amp channels. So you could potentially use a multi-channel, a 5-channel or more amp, or even 4. There's not very many of them, but you could do that. What we like to do is use the Cyrus Stereo 200. It's very quiet. It's got XLR inputs. It saves space. It's everything that you need. So that works out very well. And that's really about it. The old ones were a little more confusing because you had this big imposing Zilliqa unit with all these little different lights on it, and you could accidentally hit it and mute it. You had extra inputs, extra outputs. It was pretty intimidating. You could actually have 31 different presets. You could have it perfect from the factory, but people could plug into it and they could change all that kinds of stuff and blame you for it. And I mean, it was pretty open, pretty threatening, pretty confusing, if you knew just enough to be dangerous. This new one, man, it's pretty locked down. If you read your owner's manual and you know which is input and which is output, it's pretty hard to screw up. There's 2 things you can screw up on this DSP. The first is on the back there's a switch that's balanced versus unbalanced, and multiple people have made that mistake. So if it doesn't work, you've probably got that switch at the wrong spot. So if you got the switch set to unbalanced and you got the XLRs plugged into it, probably ain't gonna work. So the other thing,
and that's good advice for any amp that you're using, essentially, because there's that switch on a lot of different things.
It's such a little bitty switch, and not every unit does that. And it's just, but that you could do the same thing on your power amps, because your power amps, all of our amps up here, both the Parasound and the Cyrus have a switch where you can choose between RCA or XLRs, and if that ain't set right, it ain't gonna work. So, and that's, there's really nothing you can read to make yourself realize that, every amplifier device is gonna be different, but it seems to be a recurring point of contention, so it's worth mentioning. Klipsch even did it, even the top guys did it, so if they can do it, you can do it too. I've done it. So the other thing that you can screw up is now the gain knobs are actually on the front, and they look very similar to volume knobs. So there's really nothing stopping your grandma from walking up to it and turning it down or whatever. And then of course your balance between your HF and LF is totally off. So just be aware of that. That actually happened at Expona with clips that were demoing stuff, and somebody from the crowd just walked up and just started turning knobs. And so it's definitely possible. Your kid sees big fat knob, there's a good chance they're going to turn it. So other than that, it's pretty bulletproof. You can't hack into it. You can't change the bass. You can't internally change the balance. You can't change the PEQs, which by the way, a lot of people don't realize the PEQs on active crossover with a DSP like this is the biggest reason why they actually went active. So when they made the old ones, they came up with like 6 different PEQs just for the LF. And you could actually use a passive crossover, but there were so many little quirks that they could easily smooth out with the active crossover that Roy basically chose to go active. And that's why we stuck with the other big reason is that you need a pretty significant delay on that 402 horn, and it's just super easy to do with active. So between the PEQs and that, it was just kind of no-brainer, and we've never really gotten away from that. So that's why we're still having to mess with that. I don't mind it at all. So some people do a little bit. Of course, some people just want to use their favorite stereo amp and be done with it. That's the biggest problem. But it's really not too bad. I would just study your owner's manual. I mean, inputs, outputs, which one's HF, which one's LF. And it's easy to get mixed up. So I would say when you first turn it on and you want to make sure everything's working good, turn that volume all the way down and just barely just turn something on that's very calm. Put on some James Taylor or something. Just barely turn it up to make sure it's working okay. So the last thing you want to do is send a bunch of hip hop at full blast when you got your LF. Yeah, you're gonna fry that compression driver. So
that's another thing people have been asking also, and I'd wait another song, but I think it's fitting right now, is the horizontal versus vertical biamping. They're like, can you take one and do 1 amp for the high frequency and 1 amp for the low frequency? And theoretically you could, but it doesn't seem like it's designed like that's what you'd want to do. That's my opinion anyways, because you have way much more power required from that low frequency, and you're wasting a lot of power on the high.
There's different ways of looking at it. Me personally, I call it OCD or what. I would rather just have 2 identical amps. It's going to look better in the rack. Your gain structure is going to be identical. But even if you did that, then there's the question of what you just said, horizontal versus vertical. So horizontal, I guess, would mean 1 amp handles your LF cabinets, the other amp is going to handle your HF with I guess what they call vertical biamping. What you're going to do is you're actually going to take 1 amp per speaker. So basically one side of that amp is going to handle your LF, the other side of that amp is going to handle your HF. And some of your fans like that because, at least theoretically, I mean, if you did it the horizontal way, you basically got a single amp handling both LF, which is where all your heavy lifting is coming from, and your HF is just going to be cruising, not doing anything. It's going to be producing 1/4 watt most of the time. So you're going to have 1 amp that's screaming its head off and struggling, and you're going to have another amp doing nothing. So part of that logic is to split it up, and you, at least theoretically, you would have more overhead if you did it the vertical way. Of course, some people go in a totally different direction, excuse me, and they're like, oh, well, I want a low-powered tube amp for the HF, and I want a big fat solid state for the LF. And people, I guess my problem with it is that people will do this blindly without ever hearing it. I mean, if you want to do that, that's fine, but doing it blindly, trying to automatically chill out the HF before you know what it sounds like, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that idea, especially on the old ones. I don't know why you would need a tube amp on the HF of the old ones, but some people do, and if you love it, more power to you, but I don't think it's necessary myself. Oh, and in terms of sources, yeah, personally, I would stick with a high quality digital input. You know, of course, lossless would be ideal. A lot of people like their fancy CD players. I've seen some people use turntables. I think that's very odd myself. That's just a personal opinion. Because, I mean, if you think about it, what audiophile would, I kind of joke, but I kind of don't. What audiophile would listen to a digital recording of a turntable? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Well, it doesn't to me. So, I mean, as soon as you take a turntable and you hook it up to Jubilees, you're taking a turntable and you're running it through an analog to digital to analog conversion. Mm-hmm. So there goes your pure analog chain. I don't know. I don't know what that thought process is, but I'm cool. I went through the 90s when I was in high school. I'm perfectly fine with my CDs. So digital is quiet, and there's, I don't know. It just seems strange starting with the analog input just to change it to digital and then back again. So if you're a purist and you like a full 100% analog chain, I completely understand that line of thought, but as soon as you run it through that DSP, there goes that. So I haven't done this yet, but the DSP, pretty sure that top actually comes off, and I've pretty sure I've seen it without the top off at least.
It does, so and you take the top off and you can put the rack ears on too to put it back. I just haven't done it, so I don't know how it works, but I almost felt bad. One of our customers, he was like, can I stack stuff on this DSP? And to me, I'm thinking about it, how it looks in its natural form, it's metal. Mm-hmm. And it's like, yeah, it's built like every other DSP. Sure, you can stack stuff on it. Well, he stacked stuff on it with the wood cover still on, which totally screwed up the finish, I guess. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't do that. So if you're going to use the wood cover, just keep it completely clean. Don't put anything on top of that wood cover. I guess we learned the hard way. Yeah, if you want to stack, take off the cover first.
Yeah.
So as far as physically hooking, so we talked about signal path from source, which I mean your source is going to be a variable. So whether it's digital optical or RCA or something like that, it's going to go into your preamp. From your preamp, it's either going to be XLR or speaker wires to your amps. From your amp, it's likely going to be it's XLR only into the back of the DSP, correct?
The DSP, I can actually handle RCAs at this point. So the old ones were kind of goofy because you can get XLR to RCA, adapters. But the problem is that as soon as you use one, you have to go in and you have to bump up the gain. The cool thing about the new ones is that you don't have to screw with the gain like that. It's just, if you want to use XLR, cool. If you want to use RCA, cool. It doesn't, you can even mix and match. Hell, this is even mix and matched. So it doesn't, that aspect isn't as picky anymore.
So signal path is optional. You have your source is going to be weird. You can use whatever you want.
Yeah. So if you've got, I mean, I like XLRs myself, especially since I'm used to using them with the Zilicas. So me personally, I would stick with those. They're just they're more secure. We had a bad RCA in just on this. The baseband wouldn't even work. Come to find out, the end of the RCA was just so wired out. I mean, stuff like that doesn't really happen with the XLRs. It's more secure, and at least theoretically, with the longer runs, you've got less noise. Sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes it does a little bit. So that part's up to debate. But yeah, it's probably the biggest point of confusion I've seen so far in terms of hookups is the actual speaker connections on the back of the Jubilees, because there's not just 4, there's actually 6, and they're actually spread out. So you've got it's a double input, and that's for the LF. But then you go up and there's another terminal cup, and it's kind of awkward because, there's 4 terminals there, which is weird because you've only got 2 of the HF that you're supposed to. So anyways, the logic is that you got your bottom terminals most people are going to use. There's some brass jumpers that go from the bottom to the top, and then from there, wires that go from that top over the back, and it's going to connect to that compression driver. And a couple of reasons why they did all that. First of all, the old compression drivers, a pro-style compression driver is basically, you've got these little push pin terminals, and the problem is you can't take your fancy spade or banana plugs and plug into them. You got to have raw wire, and they can't be too big at that. So that's not going to work with most home setups. So they needed some way to terminate those jumper wires to go up to that compression driver. But the second thing they ran into is some people apparently like to use spade connections. I like bananas just because I switch stuff so much. It's just so fast. But when you're putting those spade connections in the back and you've got another spade connection that's connected to those jumpers, apparently that's just too much, and it wasn't very secure. So that's what they came up with. And if you think about it, it's not too bad, but if you don't read instructions or anything like this, it's a little convoluted. But yeah, just most people are just going to use those bottom terminals on that bank of 4, and that's all you need to know, really. Yeah, there's been several questions about that. Yeah. So I would have thought they would use something like the La Scala terminals, where you still just got 4 in the back, but then there's that extra set underneath that HF section. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's pros and cons of anything like that, but.
All right. We've been at it for a long time now. long time. So I think the cups are empty, so it's time to wrap this video up. If we refill, we'll be here all night. Sorry, if we refill again, we'll be here all night. My initial thoughts are, I love these things, and I already know my wife's gonna say no. It's unlike anything that you've ever heard before. And I agree with Roy. The speakers, I'm going to go home. I'm going to be listening to these probably all night and all day tomorrow. I'm going to go home and my speakers are just going to sound okay.
So, I guess I should have my 2 cents.
What do you think?
I love them, but you got to be halfway careful about what you play. That's my only caveat. Mm-hmm. And of course, you got to be careful and make sure that you can fit them in your house. And I've tried to make that very obvious, mainly because it's just going to be
You're blocking your mic when you do that.
Oh, I'm sorry. So yeah, I've tried to make it obvious that you need to check out your house and make sure you can actually fit them. Just because I like to pre-qualify people, and it would be a nightmare to ship these across the nation just to figure out that they don't fit in your door. Which this has happened, okay, and it broke my heart. But we actually. And if the customer's watching, I totally apologize if I didn't know that my part. But basically, we sold the 1802 to a guy in Florida. And he never got it out of his garage because he measured every door in his house except for the one going from his garage into his house. So these are, yeah, it wouldn't be a nightmare if something like this happened. So just check, double check, measure everything possible. But yeah, if the physical constraints aren't an issue with you, the only thing worth mentioning is they don't like junk. So if you get a good recording, they're the best thing you've ever heard. And I don't say that lightly. And like I said in the other video, this goes well beyond frequency response. When you're just listening along to us, that's what you're stripping it down to. But just the sound stage and the imaging and, the sweet spot. I mean, these 402s in particular, they're so big. One thing that I keep hearing over and over from owners is, and people who have heard them, both the new and the old, is that your sweet spot is the size of the couch. And the problem is with a lot of speakers, you can sit here right in the money seat in the middle and they'll image nicely. What happens if you sit over here? A lot of times that goes away. A lot of times the only thing you'll hear is the speaker in front of you. So for if you've got a situation where multiple people are sitting in different seats, especially with home theater, Jubilees have always been just exceptional in terms of not being picky like that. You can sit way off axis and they still image. You can still hear the one on the opposite, which isn't as common as you would think, which has always interested me. But yeah, regardless of any ramblings like that, these are very, very natural sounding. Every single recording I hear, even compared to these old ones, which I've praised for years, they just sound like things ought to sound. I mean, they just sound natural. Imaging is otherworldly. The voicing is spot on, but yeah, that bass bin, just the bass coming out of these things, even on simple things, Ryan Adams or Gilliam Welch or anything like that. It doesn't have to be rap. Just the bass is just enveloping and clean and omnidirectional. It's just it's very, very nice sounding.
Unlike anything that I've ever heard before, it's truly amazing. Everybody should buy a pair.
Of course. Everybody except the guy with the 24-inch door.
Unless you have a 24-inch door, you should buy a pair. But I think that's going to be about all we have for you today, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment below. If you want to get your hands on a set, contact this guy, Cory Harrison. Reach out to him on the Clips Owners Facebook page and get yourself a pair today if you're so inclined.
Sure. Or just call me. I'm old school.
Call him.
Can you include my phone number?
Yes. We're going to blink it up on screen like that, like those old school ads. Yeah, so reach out to Cory. He'd be happy to assist you guys. Make sure they get to your house safe and sound. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Jason.
I'm Cory.
We'll see you next week for another episode of PHT TV.
Who cares that they're size of a Subaru when you're done with them, they can bury you in it. All right, so which camera is on? Is it that one or both?
So both.
Which one should we look at?
So essentially, how I typically cut is when I'm talking, we'll go to this camera, and when you're talking, we'll go to this camera.
So I should talk at that camera?
You can talk at that camera, but we're mostly talking to each other.
That's interesting.
So yeah, that's...
All right, so I just want to be clear. Jubilees are for the cool people. So
The coolest.
If you're the uptight audiophile and want to ask people for some Grey Poupon, then
Pardon me, sir.
maybe Jews aren't for you.
Faith.
And I had Limp Bizkit.
Yeah, they covered Faith.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Guess it would be nice.
You know what? Have you heard? All right. So what's scary? Have you heard the isolated vocals of that?
No.
It's awful.
That's not the story I was expecting.
No, it's the worst thing you've ever heard. I don't know if this is a clean enough story to include, but when I was in high school, I'd first discovered Rob Zombie, White Zombie. So me and some friends, we decided to go camping, right? Here it is about 12 o'clock at night, and I'm hauling ass to the campground and driving too fast. I got Rob Zombie, Turn to High Heavens. I'm just rocking out. I'm just on cloud nine. And get about halfway through the CD, and I look over, and this guy is like doing a line off the CD cover. What is going on? Yeah, he got a little too into it, apparently.